We're going to take up the consent calendar. A quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos, to offer the day's prayer.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, as we approach our observance of Memorial Day, we pause to remember the men and women who have lost their lives in our nation's service. We also bring to mind their families, especially of the fallen warriors who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Whether we understand it directly or in a more passive way, they have impacted our lives and have allowed the cause of liberty and freedom to shine around the world. Bless them, Lord, and grant rest to their souls. Amen.
We ask our guests to continue standing for the pledge and ask Assembly Member Skinner to lead us in the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, May 27, 2010. The Assembly met at 7 a.m. Honorable Kevin Day, the Assembly Member, 45th District Presiding, Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson, the Desk Assistant Clerk Timothy Moreland reading.
Mr. Calderon moves and Mr. Knight seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I request unanimous consent for Assembly Member Nielsen to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection.
Also, I request unanimous consent to allow Assembly Members Adams, DeVore, Tran, and Torres to speak in adjourn of memory.
Without objection.
And I request unanimous consent to refer bills to committee per Assembly Bill 96. And the following is AJR 18 by Mr. Liu from the Public Employees, Retirement, and Social Security Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
SB 623, Ashburn, from the Public Employees, Retirement, and Social Security Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
SB 330 by Mr. Yee from the Higher Education Committee to the Government Organization Committee, and then back to the Higher Education Committee.
Without objection.
Also request unanimous consent to waive the 2-day file notice requirement per Joint Rule 62 to allow the Appropriations Committee to hear AB 1718 by Mr. Monning today in room 4202 upon adjournment of session.
Without objection.
Also to remove from the inactive file item A17 SB 535 by Mr. Yee at the request of the author.
Clerk will note. One-day notice.
Where is my script here? Did I give you my script? No.
But you had the wrong committee on this one. I don't know if it makes a difference.
All right.
You read the move to secretary. I just read that move.
I'm also ordering the assembly desk to remain open on Friday, May 28th, and Saturday, May 29th, for the purpose of processing items from the Committee on Appropriations.
Yes, and which was the one I mentioned, the wrong committee?
You had public employees on this one. There was bank and finance.
From which one?
You read the public employees retirement on ACHAR 18, but it was bank and finance. And then you read this one correctly.
Okay. Just want to clarify on my motion to re-refer AJR 18 by Mr. Liu. I want to clarify the re-referrals from the Banking and Finance Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
And then also, I want to request, actually, I request unanimous consent to waive the file notice requirements to allow Appropriations Committee to meet and to hear AB 1718. That's already been done. All right. I'll get it together here in a second. All right. Items from the consent calendar. File item 79, AB 2229 by Ms. Bronley, removed from consent at the request of Mr. Hagman. File item 82, AB 2322 by Fuhr, removed from consent calendar at the request of the author. File item 83, AB 2515 by Manuel Perez, removed from the consent file at the request of Mr. Hagman. File item 85, AB 2543 by Mr. Lowenthal, removed from consent at the request of the author. File item 90, AB 2793, it's a Assembly GO Committee bill, removed from consent calendar at the request of Mr. Hagman. And file item 93, SCR 97, removed by Mr. Yee, removed from the consent calendar, again at the request of the author.
Clerk will note. Mr. Calderon, can we move to the consent calendar first?
Yes, let's move to the consent calendar.
Okay, members, we are going to move to the consent calendar. First day consent file items, there are none. We are at the second day consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the second day consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2111 by Assemblymember Smythe, an act relating to service contracts.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 This is on the consent calendar, members. Mr. Calderon moves the call. Mr. Calderon?
Yes.
You're
Mr.
recognized.
Speaker, under motions and resolutions, request unanimous consent to suspend the rules to allow all bills passed today and reported Friday, May 28, Saturday, May 29, and Tuesday, June 1, from the Appropriations Committee to be ordered to the second or third reading file accordingly, one legislative day prior to the time required under the Assembly and joint rules.
Without objection, and bills reported out due pass as amended will not be eligible until Wednesday, June 2nd.
Correct. Request unanimous consent to waive the one-day waiting period for file item 5, AB 190, which is pending for concurrence in Senate amendments.
Without objection?
And finally, waive the joint rules. This requires a two-thirds vote and roll call. Request that joint rules 28, 28.1, 29, and 29.5, subsection A and subsection C, be adopted by the House. This is to accommodate conferees.
The staff had said senior.
To include 29.5, subsection C and D.
Without objection, this requires a roll call vote, members. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Calderon and Mr. Hagman are asking for aye votes, members. This requires 54 votes. Mr. Calderon and Mr. Hagman are requesting aye votes on this, members. Mr. Calderon moves a call on this motion. Okay, members, we're going to business on the daily file. Assembly third reading. Okay, members, we're going to go to concurrence items first. File items 1 through 3, pass and retain. File item 4, AB 552, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 552 by Assembly Member Solorio, an act relating to correctional facilities and making appropriation therefore and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I know we still may not have enough votes on the floor, so hopefully if you're watching from your office, you might come down, so there might be 54 votes on the floor for this. I'm real pleased to announce that CDCR and the prison court receiver have come to resolution on a plan regarding the appropriate number of new medical and mental health beds needed in our state's adult prison system. This bill is an urgency bill that would help implement that resolution. Specifically what this bill would do is allow AB 900 bond funding already authorized for building new infill beds to also be used to build beds and treatment spaces serving inmates with medical and mental health needs. It also authorizes that bond money for the renovation of facilities. This bill also in this time of needed jobs will help implement and build a new facility site in Stockton, 1,700 beds there. It'll create hundreds of jobs. Finally, I would say that of great consequence and importance, the implementation of this plan would satisfy one of the primary requirements necessary to achieving the goal of restoring control of the prison healthcare system to the state, as outlined in the Federal Receiver's Turnaround Plan of Action. Enactment of this bill will represent a significant step towards the conclusion of the federal receivership. So that means there'll be less cost going forward in terms of staffing for that office, additional requirements, and would put this legislature and this administration in full control of our prison system. This bill has labor and law enforcement support and passed out unanimously out of the Senate. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I too rise in support of AB 552. My colleague, Mr. Solario, has adequately addressed this issue. We need to address California's prison overcrowding at the earliest possible time. I believe AB 552 will help in that process. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Solorio moves the call. File item 5, AB 190. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 190 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to the Budget Act of 2010.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. I'm rising today to support AB 190. This is a budget conference vehicle. It is really a technical bill. It's designed to get us into the conference process. I'm very excited about the conference process. We've got a really good proposal, I believe, from the Assembly that's going to move us forward in a smart and effective way in a new paradigm where we don't rely on taxes, broad-based taxes, we don't rely on excessive spending, and we don't rely on borrowing. It's a new and creative approach. This bill is not the contents of that package. This is a technical vehicle to get us there. It is an Assembly bill coming over from the Senate, and I'm going to ask you all to vote no on it because we need to not concur with the Senate and move forward. I am going to vote aye on this bill, and I'm asking everyone to vote no on this technical amendment to move us forward into the conference process in a timely manner. With that, I support the bill and ask for a no vote.
Mr. Hagman.
In the world that we generally do opposite, I would concur that we should vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Members, I was reluctant to vote no on this bill until I discovered that this is a new paradigm, and now I feel compelled to do so. So I thank the author for bringing us to this new paradigm in time.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 4, noes 45. Amendments are not concurred. File item 6, ACR 109. Clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution 109 by Assembly Member Nestande relative to the Roy Wilson Memorial Highway.
Mr. Nestande.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. ACR 109 memorializes former Riverside County Supervisor Roy Wilson's.
Members, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. ACR 109 memorializes former Riverside County Supervisor Roy Wilson's contributions to his community and the residents of the Coachella Valley by naming a portion of State Highway Route 74 in his honor. This resolution was amended in the Senate to reflect Supervisor Wilson's 22 years of public service and leadership on the governing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also rise in support of this measure. ACR 109, Roy Wilson Memorial Highway. I just want to commend the author as well for bringing this forth. Our late supervisor, Mr. Roy Wilson in Riverside County, did a lot of great work for many of our residents on all sides of the county, of all parts of his district, not only the west side but also the east side, in which many times on the east side we have farm workers, we have folks that are domestic workers, we have folks that perhaps don't have a voice. He was their voice. And so I stand tall and I rise in support of this measure and ask all of you as well to support this measure. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, this bill is tagged fiscal and therefore requires a roll call vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, no 0. Measure passes. Senate amendments are concurred in. File items 7 through 10 pass and retain. File items 11 through 17 on the third reading pass and retain. File item 18, AB 1947 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1947 with amendments by Assemblymember Fong.
Mr. Fong.
Madam Chair and members, these amendments further ensure that the Solar Shares program created by this bill will not adversely impact the rooftop solar market. The new language also limits the amount of California Solar Initiative funding that can go to off-site solar to only the first megawatt. We also now require a public process before any Solar Shares program is approved to ensure participation by the public in the solar industry. These amendments bring several key organizations in support of AB 1947, including Environment California and California Solar Alliance. I ask that these amendments go out to print and the bill go back on file.
Seeing no further questions and debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Out to print and back to file. Back on file. File items 19 through 28 pass and retain. File item 29, AB 2389. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2389 by Assemblymember Gaines, an act relating to health care coverage.
Mr. Gaines.
Madam Speaker and members, thank you for the opportunity to present AB 2389, a bill that will provide greater transparency regarding out-of-pocket expenses for health plan enrollees.
A little attention, members.
The disclosure of health care quality and cost measurements gives consumers health care information they need to make informed decisions before service is rendered, so that they may make decisions based on what is best for their family and personal finances. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, no 0. Measure passes. File item 30, AB 2347 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2347 with amendments by Assemblymember Fuhr.
Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This bill is legislation that would allow a public agency to send a written notice to a trustee to postpone a foreclosure sale when the public entity has an interest in the property by virtue of trying to assure that some of the units are affordable. It's designed not to allow us to lose affordable housing. The amendments simply clarify that the bill only pertains to properties where the public agency has an agreement to make the affordable units available. And the amendments also include a requirement that the public agency provides a minimum of 72 hours of notice to the trustee. I urge your support of these amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Out to print and back on file. File item 30, AB 1837. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1837 by Assemblymember Gaines, an act relating to insurance.
Mr. Gaines.
Madam Speaker and members, thank you for the opportunity to present AB 1837, which would permit a California domestic insurer to provide certain administrative services to an affiliated, non-admitted insurer, which has been approved by the Department of Insurance for surplus lines placements in California. The purpose of 1837 is to reduce operational expenses by having administrative services subject to limitations performed by domestic insurer affiliates located in California. This bill helps protect California jobs and helps to level the playing field for California domestic insurers. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, noes 1. Measure passes. File items 32 through 34 pass and retain. File item 35, AB 2494 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2494 with amendments by Assemblymember Blumenfield.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed amendments add findings and declarations that the bill implements recommendations of the state auditor who found flaws in the contract review process of the State Personnel Board. It also adds a finding that implementing the recommendations of the state auditor as proposed by the bill would provide greater government accountability without reducing the ability of state agencies to enter and continue valid personal service contract. I ask for your aye vote on allowing these amendments.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we do oppose to these amendments and respectfully ask for a roll call vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Hagman is asking for a roll call vote on these amendments. Mr. Blumenfield requests an aye vote. Mr. Hagman requests a no vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Blumenfield moves the call. File item 36 and 37, 38, pass and retain. File item 38, AB 2304 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2304, but with amendments by Assemblymember Huffman.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. These amendments are to a bill that will help local governments have better information about important groundwater recharge areas. These are technical and clarifying amendments, largely coming out of work we've done with the Local Government Committee, and I request your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, on the amendments, without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Out to print and back on file. File item 40, pass and retain. File item 41, AB 2241. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2241 by Assemblymember Cotto, an act relating to gaming.
Mr. Cotto.
Madam Speaker and members, this bill requires a majority of the appointed members of the California Gambling Control Commission to be present to establish a quorum. The bill requires a majority of the members to approve, of the appointed members, to approve any official action of the commission or to exercise any of the duties, powers, or functions. The bill has no opposition. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Cotto moves the call. File items 42 through 47, pass and retain. File item 48, AB 2792. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2792 by Assembly Committee on Governmental Organization and act relating to horse racing.
Mr. Cotto.
Madam Speaker and members, this is a committee bill, the GO committee bill. It provides technical cleanup to horse racing law to ensure that the law reflects changes that were made through the enactment of SB 16XX. It deletes language in existing California horse racing law regarding support for the network of California fairs, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 46, no 0. Measure passes. Members, we're going to go back to file item number 40, AB 2774. On the amendments, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2774 with amendments by Assemblymember Swanson.
Mr. Swanson.
Madam Speaker, thank you. This bill is to establish a definition of serious physical harm for the purposes of OSHA law. We are currently in negotiations with the opponents of the bill and have exchanged a series of counter proposals. While there is no deal yet, these amendments reflect the current compromise proposal of the proponents of this bill. We would continue to negotiate in good faith with the opponents as the bill moves to the Senate to attempt to reach a compromise. But these amendments demonstrate that we are moving in the right direction and getting closer to the opposition. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments so the bill can go out to print and back on file.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do oppose these amendments and we respect a roll call vote, please.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Swanson's asking for an aye vote on these amendments. Mr. Hagman's asking for a no vote on these amendments. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. These amendments require a majority present and voting. Ayes 34, noes 19. Amendments are adopted, out to print and back on file. File items 49 through 59 pass and retain. File item 60, AB 1932. On the amendments, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1932 with amendments by Assemblymember Hernandez.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The amendments at the desk are purely technical and for definition purposes. Instead of creating two new definitions as the bill currently does, the amendments will simply reference the definition used by CMS, which is consistent with the bill's purpose. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate and without objection, we will take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print and back on file. File items 61 and 62 pass and retain. File item 63, AB 2396. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2396 by Assemblymember Solorio, an act relating to workers' compensation insurance.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill would subject the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau, in its role as the Insurance Commissioner's statistical agent, to open meetings and public records laws. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 0. Measure passed. File items 64 through 67 pass and retain. File item 68, AB 2500. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2500 by Assemblymember Hagman, an act relating to business and professions.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this is an important pro-military bill. It exempts members of the military who've been called to active duty from having to pay their late renewal fee on state licenses that may expire while they're serving our country. This bill will help members of the military re-enter civilian life once they get back from active duty. This is the least we can do for the men and women of our military who are putting their lives at risk to fight our fights in Afghanistan and overseas. I respect the ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, no 0. Measure passes. File item 69, AB 2448. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2448 by Assemblymember Furutani, an act relating to public contracts.
Mr. Furutani is not at his desk. We will pass temporarily. File item 70, AB 1901. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1901 by Assemblymember Ruskin, an act relating to post-secondary education.
Mr. Ruskin.
Madam Speaker, AB 1901 works toward a public agenda for higher education in California. It's a legislative vehicle for the work of the Joint Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education. It's a work in progress as the committee continues its evaluation of higher education in California. The bill makes initial findings and declarations regarding higher education that describe what our people and state require from our public system of higher education in order to ensure our state's success in the coming decades. I'd like to take a moment again to thank the committee members for their support and interest in the Joint Committee's work, and my co-chair, Senator Negrete McLeod, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Block.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill has bipartisan, bicameral support. As Higher Ed Chair, I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I also urge an aye vote. There may be some refinements as it goes, but this is not a dangerous or worrisome working process. This is a bill that has been laboriously discussed, lengthy hearings. The chairman has done a wonderful, the chairs have done a wonderful job, and this will help us take another step in the master plan of higher education. It's appropriate to periodically review. I was a part of the one in the 1980s, tailed in on the one in the 70s. Again, I'm dating myself, but this is a necessary movement, and we should all support this measure.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, no 0. Measure passes. File items 71 through 75 pass and retain. File item 76, SCR 73 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate concurrent resolution 73 with amendments by Assemblymember Torlakson.
Mr. Torlakson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, these are clarifying and technical amendments clarifying that 70% of the students in California fail the basic fitness gram test. I urge your aye vote on these amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Out to print and back on file. We're going to lift the calls, members, on the bills that are on call. First item. We are going to lift the call on the consent calendar. Item 77. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2157.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2249.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2307.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2538.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2642.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2778.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2788.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2791.
Ayes 59, no 0.
Assembly Bill 2327.
Ayes 59, no 0.
And Senate Concurrent Resolution 97.
Ayes 59, no 0. That completes the consent calendar. File item 4, AB 552. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, no 0. Measure passes. Same vote on the urgency. File item 35, AB 2494. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. These are the amendments, and it requires only those members present and voting. Ayes 40, noes 19. The amendments pass. Out to print and back to file. File item 41, AB 2241. Clerk will read. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 12. Measure passes. I'm prepared to lift the call on suspending the joint rules. Clerk will read. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 0. Rules are suspended. Okay, members, we are going to go back to one last bill on the third reading. File item 69, AB 2448. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2448 by Assemblymember Furutani, an act relating to public contracts.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 2448 would allow community college districts to achieve the best value and be more cost-effective in their procurement process. Lowest prices does not always guarantee cost-effectiveness. AB 2448 does two things. It authorizes community college districts to award contracts for goods and services based on the best value criteria in addition to awarding contracts to the lowest responsible bidder. Second, AB 2448 makes clarifying changes to allow change orders without securing bids as long as the combined total value of the changes does not exceed 10% of the original contract price. This bill has received overwhelming bipartisan support. Urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Norby.
I rise in support of 2448 and compliment the author on his speech yesterday in my hometown of Fullerton at Fullerton College.
Thank you.
The oldest continually operated junior college in the state. I support the bill.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 58, noes 0. Measure passes. This concludes the business on the daily file. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. We will now move to adjourn in memories. Mr. Adams, will you be rising? Mr. Adams.
Good morning, colleagues. It is with tremendous honor that I get to stand before you today and ask you to join me in adjourning in memory of a very special man. This gentleman's name, Ray McFarland Reed, is the father of our very own Sergeant Halsey Reed. And Ray led a remarkable life, one that I want to take just a few minutes to share with you so that you can relish in the kind of life that was well led and one that is deserving of honor. My friends, Ray was born in November 3rd, 1927 in Peking, China. He stayed there till he was about 12 years old. During that time, he crossed the Pacific Ocean by ship 3 separate instances. Ray was on the swim team at Yale, where he was also the captain of the swim team. In 49, 50, and 51, Ray served on there, and in fact, he held 2 world records during his time for swimming. Ray was also a Marine. He served in the Marine Corps from 46 to 47 as a first lieutenant, from 51 to 53 as a first lieutenant, and he retired from the Marine Corps Reserves as a captain in 1961. Ray got married to a beautiful woman named Joan Gibson at the little church around the corner in New York City. They had 4 daughters, Curran, Gibson, Calder, and Halsey. Beginning in 1967, Ray was appointed by Governor Reagan, where he served as an executive secretary of the Educational Television Advisory Committee. He was chief of the Division of Consumer Services, executive secretary of the California Medical Board of Examiners, and is a special assistant to the governor. After he retired, he and his wife opened up a boarding kennel for dogs, Piccadilly Farms in Elk Grove, California. Ray loved his family. He loved spending time with them in his home in Sea Ranch, California. And he had a great sense of humor, a quick wit, and was loved by everybody around him. He was considered Mr. Nice by all those who knew him. He was a beloved father, a beloved husband, and a beloved friend to all those he knew. My friends, it is with great honor that I ask you to adjourn in memory of Raymond McFarland Reed.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I didn't know Ray, but when I read his life story, it almost gave me chills. What accomplishment. But what I would speak to is something that I believe very firmly in, that the parent is known in the child. Though I did not know Ray, I know Halsey, who worked so wonderfully with us, supporting us. She's such a professional. She certainly is a great reflection of her father, and our hearts go out to his family.
Thank you, Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Today I have the sad task of rising to adjourn in memory of Anita Ferguson. Anita Ferguson was the wife of a former member in this body, Gil Ferguson, who passed away 3 years ago this month. Anita Ferguson was a political power in her own right. She was an active member of the Balboa Bay Republican Women Federated and many other Republican groups, including Principles Over Politics, a group that former Assemblyman Gil Ferguson started and Anita Ferguson was to run after Gil passed. Anita Ferguson graduated from the University of Southern California, which is where she met Gil. Together they raised 4 children, including Jay of Newport Beach. Jay Ferguson, by the way, is actually one of the 4 people running for the seat that I'm vacating because of term limits. Daryl of Santa Ana, Rhonda Priestley of Corona del Mar, and Mark of Clearwater, Florida. They had 9 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise to adjourn in memory of Anita Ferguson.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names forward to the desk. The remaining requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Session schedule for today as well as next week. Today, Friday, May 28th, last day in the Assembly to notice intent to remove a bill from the inactive file if an author wishes to amend by Wednesday, June 2nd. That is today. Monday, May 31st, holiday, Memorial Day. Tuesday, June 1st, floor session from noon to 5 p.m. Last day in the Assembly to submit amendments to the desk by 5 p.m. or before adjournment if an author wishes to amend by Wednesday, June 2nd. And that is Tuesday, June 1st, last day in the Assembly to submit amendments to the desk by 5 p.m. Today, following session, there will be an Appropriations Committee hearing following adjournment in room 4202. Appropriations will be meeting in room 4202 following adjournment. And I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves, Mr. Hagman seconds, that this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, June 1st at 12 noon. Quorum call is lifted.